Every story of a record-breaking hurricane begins quietly, and Hurricane Patricia was no different. Its birth traces back to mid-October of the year 2015, when a sprawling cluster of thunderstorms began drifting westward off the coast of Central America into the eastern Pacific Ocean. At first, there was little reason for concern. Such systems appear frequently during the season, and many never become organized storms. For several days, Patricia remained a loose collection of clouds and showers with little structure. It faced dry air intrusions that kept it from consolidating, and forecasters initially treated it as nothing more than a disturbance to monitor. However, on October 20th, the system strengthened just enough to be classified as a tropical depression. By October 21st, the storm organized further and achieved tropical storm status. The name Patricia was assigned, making it the 24th named storm of what was already one of the busiest Pacific hurricane seasons on record. At this stage, Patricia seemed entirely ordinary. Its winds were modest, its circulation only beginning to tighten, and no major weather models predicted anything unusual. Yet beneath the surface of the Pacific, the perfect fuel for disaster was waiting. The year 2015 coincided with one of the strongest El Niño events in modern history. This climate phenomenon had been steadily warming vast areas of the Pacific Ocean for months, creating a deep pool of unusually hot water. In the region where Patricia developed, sea surface temperatures reached around 87 degrees Fahrenheit, or 31 degrees Celsius, some of the warmest ever recorded there. This extreme ocean heat provided an almost limitless energy source for any storm able to tap into it. The surrounding atmosphere also fell into alignment. Wind shear, the disruptive force that often tears apart tropical systems, was remarkably low. The air mass was saturated with moisture, removing yet another obstacle. In short, the stage was set for a storm to thrive. Conditions so ideal that meteorologists later described them as near perfect for rapid growth. At the time, however, Patricia was still seen as unremarkable. Its circulation was fragile, its thunderstorms only loosely connected, and a few expected what was to come. But quietly on the warm waters of the eastern Pacific, the seeds of the strongest hurricane ever recorded in the Western Hemisphere had been planted. What happened next with Hurricane Patricia stunned even the most seasoned forecasters. Beginning on October 22nd of the year 2015, the system started to gather strength at a pace rarely seen in meteorology. At dawn, Patricia's winds were measured at about 60 miles per hour, still only the strength of a modest tropical storm. By nightfall, it had already intensified into a hurricane with winds over 90 miles per hour. The following day, October 23rd, Patricia began one of the most extreme cases of rapid intensification ever observed. In less than 24 hours, its maximum sustained winds soared from 100 miles per hour to 200 miles per hour, while its central pressure plummeted to an astonishing 879 millibars. This made Patricia not just strong, but the strongest hurricane ever recorded in the Western Hemisphere in terms of wind speed and pressure. The speed of its intensification caught many by surprise. Typically, storms strengthen gradually, allowing meteorologists and emergency planners time to issue warnings and prepare. Patricia, however, transformed from a minimal hurricane to a Category 5 monster in a single day. The National Hurricane Center in Miami described its development as staggering and issued urgent alerts to Mexico's Pacific coast. Satellite images from the period revealed a storm that looked almost otherworldly. Patricia's eye became perfectly defined, a sharp circle surrounded by towering clouds that reached heights of over 50,000 feet. The storm's symmetry was near flawless, the classic buzzsaw ultra appearance that meteorologists associate with the most intense tropical cyclones on Earth. Part of what fueled this explosive growth was the extremely warm sea surface temperatures linked to the powerful El Niño of 2015. The ocean provided Patricia with more energy than most storms ever encounter, while low wind shear meant nothing disrupted its vertical structure. Every factor aligned for the hurricane to strengthen at the maximum possible rate. By the evening of October 23rd, the storm had already become legendary. Forecasters scrambled to revise predictions, Mexican officials rushed to issue evacuation orders, and residents of coastal towns were suddenly facing the approach of a storm unlike anything they had ever seen. Patricia had transformed from a forgettable, tropical storm into the most intense hurricane in modern Western Hemisphere history in barely more than a day. On the afternoon of October 23rd, the Pacific coast of Mexico braced for impact. Hurricane Patricia, now classified as a Category 5 storm, approached the shoreline with maximum sustained winds near 200 miles per hour. This placed it among the strongest tropical cyclones ever recorded anywhere in the world. Its projected path carried it directly toward the states of Jalisco, Colima, and Nayarit, all home to coastal communities and major tourist areas. Patricia made landfall near Cuicmala in the state of Jalisco late in the day on October 23rd. By that point, the hurricane's core remained incredibly intense, although interaction with the mountainous terrain quickly began to weaken it. Even so, the coastal areas first struck by the eye wall endured winds strong enough to uproot trees, destroy poorly built structures, and rip apart power lines in an instant. Torrential rainfall accompanied the winds, overwhelming rivers and triggering flash floods in valleys and low-lying towns. Unlike some hurricanes that linger over the sea before striking land, Patricia moved inland very quickly. This speed spared Mexico from catastrophic, widespread devastation, but the regions directly under its path still suffered heavily. Entire sections of the coastal highway were washed away, and agricultural zones saw crops flattened within hours. Coffee, banana, and corn fields that sustained that local economies were ruined, leaving many families without a livelihood. The resort city of Puerto Vallarta narrowly escaped the storm's full force as the core passed to its south. Still, strong winds caused significant damage to hotels, shops, and the city's popular boardwalk. Nearby villages were less fortunate. In smaller communities, particularly in Colima, homes built of wood or sheet metal were shredded, forcing residents to take shelter in more secure buildings such as schools and churches. Despite Patricia's record-breaking strength at sea, the death toll was surprisingly limited. Early warnings, mass evacuations, and rapid emergency responses played a vital role. Thousands of people were moved away from the most vulnerable coastal areas before landfall. Mexican authorities reported only a handful of direct fatalities, an outcome that shocked many given the storm's raw power. By the night of October 23rd, Patricia had begun weakening rapidly as it moved into Mexico's Sierra Madre Mountains. Within a day, it had lost much of its ferocity, downgraded from a hurricane to a tropical depression. But while the storm itself faded, the destruction it left behind marked a defining moment in Mexico's modern history of natural disasters. In the days following Hurricane Patricia's landfall, the scale of the storm's impact became clear across western Mexico. Though the hurricane weakened rapidly after crossing the coast, its short but furious strike left behind entire communities struggling to recover. Roads connecting towns in Jalisco and Colima were blocked by landslides, making it difficult for emergency workers to deliver food, medicine, and supplies. Bridges were washed out by swollen rivers, isolating rural villages that depended on outside aid. Electricity outages spread across multiple states, with some areas left without power for several days. In Colima, water systems were disrupted, forcing residents to rely on temporary distribution by relief trucks. Families whose homes were destroyed or heavily damaged sought shelter in schools, gymnasiums, and public buildings. The Mexican government, alongside the military, set up field kitchens and distributed thousands of hot meals each day to displaced residents. The agricultural toll was particularly severe. Banana and papaya plantations were devastated, with entire harvests wiped out in a matter of hours. Livestock losses added further hardship for farming families. For many rural workers, Patricia was not just a natural disaster, but a blow to long-term survival, as fields would take months, if not years, to fully recover. Despite the destruction, international relief organizations praised Mexico's preparedness and response. The coordinated evacuation of tens of thousands of people prevented the hurricane from becoming a far deadlier event. Experts noted that if Patricia had struck a more densely populated urban center at its peak strength, the outcome could have been catastrophic. Instead, damage was concentrated, but lives were largely spared, making the hurricane an unusual case of immense power paired with relatively low mortality. Across affected states, volunteers joined recovery efforts, clearing debris and helping rebuild basic infrastructure. Medical brigades offered care in remote villages where access to hospitals had been cut off. The Mexican Red Cross, alongside civil defense groups, distributed blankets, bottled water, and hygiene supplies. The storm survivors spoke of shock at the force of the winds and gratitude that so many had been able to escape with their lives. By the end of October, Patricia had left behind a landscape marked by fallen trees, ruined crops, and scarred coastlines. While global headlines highlighted the record-breaking winds and rapid intensification for the people of western Mexico, the storm's legacy was measured in uprooted livelihoods and the slow process of rebuilding. The resilience of local communities became a central theme of the recovery, showing how preparation and cooperation lessened the human cost of one of the most powerful hurricanes in recorded history. Hurricane Patricia's story did not end when its winds calmed and the floodwaters receded. In the months and years that followed, scientists, governments, and communities reflected on what lessons could be learned from one of the most intense storms ever recorded in the Western Hemisphere. Meteorologists studied Patricia's unprecedented rapid intensification, where it strengthened from a tropical storm to a record-breaking hurricane in just over 24 hours. This event underscored how climate and ocean conditions in the Pacific can align to create storms that grow with extraordinary speed, leaving very little time for communities to prepare. Globally, Patricia fueled ongoing discussions about the link between climate change and extreme weather. While scientists stressed that no single storm could be blamed entirely on warming oceans, Patricia was viewed as a warning sign of how rising sea surface temperatures may create more frequent and more powerful hurricanes in the future. For disaster planners, it reinforced the importance of evacuation strategies, early warning systems, and public communication. Mexico's effective evacuations were highlighted as a model for other nations at risk of sudden, high-intensity storms. In the realm of emergency response, Patricia shifted how agencies approached forecasting and preparedness. The World Meteorological Organization and other international groups cited Patricia as a case study for how global cooperation in monitoring and predicting tropical systems can save lives. In classrooms and training programs, Patricia became a reference point for emergency managers, learning how to react swiftly to fast-developing threats. For residents of Western Mexico, the storm's legacy was more personal. Entire communities carried forward stories of survival, resilience, and rebuilding. Farmers worked to restore crops that had been lost, while towns along the coast rebuilt schools, homes, and businesses damaged by the storm. The experience created a stronger awareness of disaster preparedness at the local level, with many communities improving shelters and practicing evacuation drills in the years after the hurricane. Even a decade later, Patricia remains a benchmark in the study of hurricanes. Its combination of record-setting wind speeds, rapid development, and relatively limited loss of life set it apart from many other historic storms. The hurricane demonstrated both the destructive potential of nature and the power of human readiness to prevent mass tragedy. In the end, Hurricane Patricia is remembered not just for its incredible strength, but also for the lessons it left behind. It showed the world that while extreme weather cannot be stopped, preparation, science, and collective action can determine whether a storm becomes a catastrophe or a story of resilience.